Scamming in Runescape is a practice as old as the game itself. From trimming armor to multi-day social engineering lures, you're sure to encounter someone looking to separate you from your gold. The old scams were as dumb as it gets, but it made sense, because they were designed by 12-year-olds to scam 10-year-olds. The scam started out basic and relied on the fact that in early RuneScape, the knowledge about the game wasn't as readily available. Many people didn't know you couldn't actually trim armor. I mean, trimmed armor existed, you could see it, it had to get that way somehow, right? Most of the players who fell for this probably didn't even know what a clue scroll was. And then there were the harsh game mechanics back then. If you died for any reason, your items would be scattered all over the ground for anyone to take in a matter of minutes. You had people tricking others to walk into dangerous areas and then taking all their shit when they died. There were aggressive random events. Sometimes you'd be inside a house without any armor or weapons, you'd get attacked by a random event, and some guy outside would start spam closing the door on you until you died and then take all your items when you dropped them, and you couldn't opt out of these. Another random event would send your axe head flying off when you were AFKing trees. It would land a few tiles away, but if you were AFK, you might not notice it until it was too late. Players would start lighting fires all over the place so you couldn't see where the axe head landed, and if it was a rune axe, this would actually be worth something. And the funny thing was, a scam like this was a crime of opportunity. These were not even dedicated scammers looking to fuck you over. These were just people who saw a chance to make 8K and took it. The community back then was ruthless. People would screw you over for almost nothing if they thought they could get away with it. Years-long friendships were ended for well under 100K. Doubling money was a classic. It sounds too stupid to work. The doubler tries to convince people to trade him gold with the promise of trading the victim back double the amount. He may actually double a small amount of gold to tempt people into trading him more, and he may not, but the second someone trades him a decent chunk of gold, you guessed it, he's not going to give it back. He might log off, or he might just walk away. At this point, there's nothing you can do. And people still fall for this scam to this day. The fact that this ever worked is mind-boggling, but you've got to figure many people who fall for it already know it's a scam, but tempt fate by seeing how much he will actually double and then try to pull out before the doubler logs off with the cash. This is a very basic example of an anti-scam, and this actually used to work sometime, but here's the thing. Scammers nowadays aren't 12, they're 32. They also know you're going to try to anti-scam them. In fact, most people who fall for scams in 2023 are people who actively try to anti-scam. Lures nowadays rely on you thinking that you're too smart to get scammed, and you let your guard down. To get into the levels of complexity of some of these lures, let's look at a typical scam from nowadays. And I can't stress enough that they get even more complicated than this. Picture you're a mid-level player, you've done a bit of bossing, you have Bandos, maybe a Fang, a random guy at the GE will ask you to wear stuff for a video, and try to convince you to hop to a PvP world. Now, banks are still safe here, so you may actually do it. The scammer will have you Zammy Brew down to low health, and then trade you an amulet of Avaris and tell you to equip it, which will skull you. He'll be stringing you along with promises of more items that he'll show you in a trade window, and then he'll trade you a Pharaoh Scepter and tell you to equip it. Now the Pharaoh Scepter is worth a few mil, so you're already thinking that you're anti-scamming this guy and that you're going to get even more shit from him. Only when you left-click the scepter to equip it, it actually teleports you into multi, and then you get specced out instantly and lose all the gear that you were wearing. Okay, but let's go back. Let's say you're not a complete moron, and you don't want to go to a PvP world with your expensive gear out of nowhere. Well, clearly they thought of this, which is why they changed up how they do the scam. Now, more likely, the lure will start with some high-level account who will call Lure A, befriending you with big talks about how he's going to get you into raids and other high-level content, and you're going to be rich. Meanwhile, while you're chatting it up with the high-level guy, the other lure, who will call Lure B, will attempt the same thing as previously mentioned, only this time he'll tell you to bank everything and go to a PvP world. Lure A will then message you that you guys can anti-scam Lure B by logging in under him and taking the stuff that he drops. You feel at ease because you have nothing to lose now that all your stuff is in the bank, so you log into the PvP world, you pick up the stuff he drops, you might get a whip or a piece of barrows or something worth a mil. They're not going to give you too much, but just like a little taste. It's at this point that Lure A, the high level guy, will spurg out at you in the PMs with talks of how you could have gotten so much more if you waited because he just dropped a T-bow and he just dropped full Torva, and he devises a fake plan to bait Lure B by going back to the PvP world in expensive gear this time. And Lure B is right there waiting for you, where he launches right back into the giveaway scam, gets you to skull, brew down, gives you the Pharaoh Scepter like we mentioned before, you click it, and you lose all your shit. This is all pretty convoluted, right? The field of scamming is ever evolving. It's an art form, something doesn't work, they tweak it. Let's say you actually know about the Pharaoh Scepter scam. It's been going on for a few years, you're a seasoned scaper, you know not to click the scepter because it's going to teleport you, so you figure, hey, I can anti-scam them, I can just steal the scepter by taking it but not equipping it and just leaving. You might think that you have nothing to lose this way. You could totally anti-scam just the scepter, and it's a few mil, why not? But they thought of this too. Did you know that the Barbarian Assault Bank isn't safe in PvP worlds? Neither did I, but they do, and that's where they'll take you. You head over there, you log into the high-risk PvP world in your gear, ready to collect your free scepter, thinking you have them outsmarted, and then you instantly get specced out before you even get the chance to trade the guy, and you don't get the scepter, and you lose all your shit. And this is just one example. You could know every trick in the book relating to this scam, but there's probably 20 other ones that are just as convoluted, and you don't know how they work. In a similar sort of scam, you'll find yourself again in a high-risk PvP world with a bunch of expensive gear. Given that you've been promised, again, a bunch of free shit, and you figure you're gonna play it smart, just stay at the bank, and nothing bad will happen, the guy will trade you and then run away. A few seconds later, another guy that's the same level, wearing the same gear, and has a similar username will run back to you in hopes that you'll think it's the same guy. When you accept the trade offer from the first guy, you'll be dragged out into multi, where you'll be frozen and killed and lose all your shit. Again, it seems too stupid to work, but there was a guy in my clan who lost a T-bow this way, and that was because he thought he could outsmart the scammers. Similar to skull tricks, where someone will attack you and run away, then their clone will run back, you'll attack him, and then you're skulled, and shortly after, you're probably dead. Some people put a little twist on this and dress up like NPCs and walk around the mage arena waiting for unassuming players doing the quest to manually cast spells on them and skull themselves. In terms of skull tricks, you can avoid them now by just enabling PK skull prevention, but unfortunately, Jagex cannot prevent players from wandering into multi on high-risk PvP worlds by accident. All these lure variations share a common theme though, and that's that one way or another, you end up on a PvP world with expensive gear. Seems pretty easy to avoid, but people still end up in this situation because they try to anti-scam. And if you don't try to anti-scam, you're probably going to be safe from these. Of course, there are different types of scams that still see use. Many involve taking you to a random area of the game, trying to fill your inventory with random items so that you're forced to drop something expensive. In your mind, you're just dropping it for a second until the scammer tells you to drop a tele tab, at which point you shift click the tele tab with your item on the ground, and then you teleport away and lose your item. Speaking of tele tabs, there's the cami tab scam, and these scam bots have been using the same script for years, but it still somehow works. They offer to buy an already expensive item for a ridiculously high price. You offer the item, they try to trade you a cami tab, telling you to trade their main Bornos in Camelot. Looking at the high scores, Bornos is a maxed account, probably hasn't played in years, and might have no idea this is going on, or might be in on it, you never really know. This one always cracks me up because you'd be thinking they'd at least change the name of the account that they tell you to look up, but it's been Bornos for at least 3 years, and people still fall for it. If it wasn't working, they would have stopped by now and tried something else. Similar to this scam, you have people claiming that they're going to trade you 10% of the value of your inventory for free in hopes that you'll get so excited at the thought of making the 10% that you'll accept the trade with your inventory still in the trade window. Stuff like this can be avoided clearly by just always thinking twice before you make any sort of trade, and also realizing that trading other players really does not have much legitimate use at this point in the game with the GE. One of the most common ones you'll see is fake YouTube giveaways, which send you to a YouTube video or a Twitch stream with a phishing link. This happens all the time. There's people spamming this at the GE 24/7. And another big theme of the lures in this day and age is, of course, social engineering, or pretending to be someone's friend more specifically, and getting them into a Discord voice call to establish some sort of credibility. Apparently, people let their guard down when they get in voice chat, and this will open you up to all kinds of shit, such as going PKing with them and getting yourself killed in the process, letting them borrow items which you will never get back, and helping them anti-scam other people, which in turn will probably get you scammed. Many people have mentioned that if you grew up playing RuneScape, you're always on high alert for scammers, and this lesson can be applied to real life. If something seems too good to be true in this game or in real life, it probably is. You couldn't trust anyone on RuneScape back in the day, and unfortunately, that's pretty much still true. It's just that you're getting scammed by people that aren't in 7th grade. They've now evolved into a fully grown, unemployed 28-year-old. Scamming is alive and well, but you can avoid all scams by never trading anyone and putting anyone who talks to you in OSRS on ignore immediately.